Okay, in this video I'm going to show how to install these newly redesigned brackets for innovative gauges. This is what my standard bracket looks like, which has a mounting point here for the head. Now these particular gauges have quite a few cables coming out the back, and these cables get in the way when you try to install the head, and this particular mounting point just doesn't work. So these have these forks here that allow you to go around the wires and at the same time give you proper distance from the top of the bracket to the base of the head, so that the head sits correctly in your dash and it looks clean. Okay. So just like with any other gauge, you begin with the bracket. And I'm not going to be very careful with this gauge because it's just my test gauge. But you obviously want to be very careful so you don't get a lot of dirt into your gauge. So you keep your faceplate on while threading the bracket. And you want to push the bracket all the way up against the lip of the gauge. Now, if you do it the way I did it, which is backwards, you want to rotate your gauge all the way around so that the bottom of your gauge is centered with the bottom of the bracket. So at this point, I'm going to make sure that this piece here is centered with the bottom of my gauge here. Push it all the way in. And I can always make fine adjustments later once I have my face bezel installed. Now this is the Nissan face bezel for Nissan gauges. You have your silver piece and a black piece that goes behind it. If you look at the back, there are 3 mounting points. There's the bottom one right here. This one's like 6 o'clock, and there's a 10 o'clock and a 2 o'clock mounting point. So the bottom one here will mount against the bottom mounting point of the bracket. So you want to hook this on first. Okay, this is hooked. Push the bezel down. Once it's lined up with these other 2 mounting points, you simply push it down and hold it up from the bottom at the same time. So while holding it from the bottom, I'm gonna push from the top. Okay. Now you at this point should have your buttons in, so your faceplate will not be moving on you like this. And you should have a little bit of space between the face of the gauge and the bezel. So at this point, all you have to do is just grab the gauge and the bracket and push the gauge up a little bit. Okay, when you push it up a little bit, that will remove the space. It'll be flush. The gauge will be flush against the bracket. The bezel. Now, in order to keep this like that, You want to put a drop of any silicone-based glue like this. Goop is pretty good. It will dry out soft, and you can still remove it down the road if you need to. I would put a little bit of glue right here behind the mounting, behind the bracket, and this will keep this in place. Obviously, you want to make sure that your gauge is centered against the bottom mounting point. If this is centered, then you know your gauge will look good when it's installed. And at this point, you are ready to install the heads.